were in the presence of a ship whose severed shrouds still hung from their clasps. Its hull looked in good condition, and it must have gone under only a few hours before. The stumps of 3 masts, chopped off 2 feet above the deck, indicated a flooding ship that had been forced to sacrifice its masting. But it had heeled sideways, filling completely, and it was listening to port even yet. A sorry sight, this carcass lost under the waves, but sorrier still was the sight on its deck, where, lashed with ropes to prevent their being washed overboard, some human corpses still lay. I counted 4 of them, 4 men, one still standing at the helm, then a woman, halfway out of a skylight on the afterdeck, holding a child in her arms. This woman was young. Under the brilliant lighting of the Nautilus's rays, I can make out her features, which the water hadn't yet decomposed. With a supreme effort, she had lifted her child above her head, and the poor little creature's arms were still twined around its mother's neck. The postures of the 4 seamen seemed ghastly to me, twisted from convulsive movements, as if making a last effort to break loose from the ropes that bound them to their ship. And the helmsman, standing alone, calmer, his face smooth and serious, his grizzled hair plastered to his brow, his hands, clutching the wheel, seemed even yet to be guiding his wrecked 3-master through the ocean depths. Hi guys, and welcome back to my desk for the first book of 2024, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. This one was pretty long. It's a tome of a book. So there's quite a bit of notes that I made for this one, and I got a little bit to say, so let's just jump right in. Okay, I thought I was recording there for quite a while. Apparently I was not. Let's just jump right in again. So this book, set way back in the 1800s, begins in 1886, and the ship's cruising around the ocean. Not quite ships like this. And they are encountering this large giant, what they think is an animal, and it starts attacking ships, and we really can't have that. The naval powers of the world were not happy, so they convened some experts to figure out what this thing was and how to get rid of it. And so we are introduced to the main character of our book, Professor Anorax. Now the name is French, so it could be like Anaro, but I'm gonna call him Professor Anorax, or just Professor probably, or the Professor. And we'll just go with that. So, they consult the professor, and he says this is a yet heretofore undiscovered giant animal of the same general classification as like whales and dolphins, or the narwhal, specifically because it has a giant spike, which is used to pierce ships. With that, he sets out on a ship. His trusty sidekick, younger manservant guy, Conceal. And again, I could be pronouncing that wrong. It's a French name, spelled Consiel. So we're gonna call him Conceal. On board the ship, they meet and make friends of a rowdy, boisterous French-Canadian harpoonist, Ned Land. Heretofore to be named Ned or Mr. Land. Those are our main characters, the Professor, Conceal, and Ned. And they're on this ship, and then they're searching, and then they encounter this creature, and the creature, they get eventually close enough to attack it, and its harpoon just bounces right off. And they're like, what the heck? And then the Nautilus kind of, I haven't introduced that the ship is called the Nautilus yet. They get thrown overboard, and then they eventually land on this island, which turns out to be a ship. It's not an animal, it's a ship. It's basically a submarine. Although it can cruise at the top of the water. I guess submarines can do that as well. Then they are basically held as captives on board this sub, not knowing what's going on at all. And then after about 24 hours, I think it was, they meet the ship's captain, who is speaking a gibberish language with his crew, so they can't understand what he says. And they're trying to explain to him what happened, and that they thought that the ship was an animal and had been attacking ships, etc. Anyways, so eventually Captain Nemo speaks to them, and he says, well, guys, you're stuck. Any man who boards the Nautilus can never leave. So they are prisoners. But they are free aboard the Nautilus to explore, to discover how it works, to discover things within the sea. So then they set out on this journey, a journey of 20,000 leagues under the sea, and explore the ocean as kind of the captors aboard the ship. And the story is about what they experience, their the kind of inner turmoil and turmoil between the three, of whether or not to escape, and if to escape, when to escape, and what is the background of Captain Nemo. Who is he? Where does he come from? Why does he live on the ship under the sea? Why has no one ever heard of him? Why has he rejected the world of man on land? So it's a lot of mystery, a lot of adventure, and an overall generally good story, and didn't take quite as long to get through as I initially had thought that it might, but it's not all positive. So I'm gonna pull out my notes here because there was a lot of stuff I wanted to say, and we'll get to the review part. So now that I have read, this is my third Jules Verne novel, I definitely notice a consistency in the style and structure of how Jules Verne writes a novel. There's always a strong male lead who is an expert in some type of field, has a very arrogant way of being, but yet is also always very curious and hungry for more knowledge. There's this weird dichotomy of strong belief in everything they already know, and yet willingness to completely abandon that at the first sense or proposition that they might be completely wrong, which is kind of absurd and extremely frustrating at times. As a reader, you're like, oh, so you just abandoned. It's so strange because they speak with such authority, and then at the same time, they will relinquish that authority to someone else who they view with respect. So in this instance, the expert main character is the professor, and then the person he relinquishes that authority to is then Captain Nemo, who he comes to see as an expert as all things under the sea, in the ocean, all ocean creatures, and even with regard to science and electricity and mechanics and whatever the official term for building and managing a ship is. And yet he will speak about Nemo with such reverence, and then at the same time also criticize him. But it's an odd thing to witness that he just kind of accepts his expertise, because oftentimes Nemo contradicts him, and then the professor will be like, well, no, that's not it, and then Nemo's like, well, yes, it is, and he's like, okay, you're right, I believe you, without any actual evidence, and then later he will show him something that proves it. But it's a, I don't know, it's such an odd thing, and it's kind of unique to this specific novel. I don't know that there's a relationship quite like that in the other two books. Usually the main character is the expert all the way through, I think, in the other two books. But very, very similar character, very similar sidekick character, although in this one, Conceal, I feel so bad for him. He's basically just given up his whole life to live at the will and the whim of the professor, who he calls master, as master wishes, as master does, Conceal will do. He speaks often in the third person, and then you have Ned, who is this rowdy, boisterous, unlikable character who has a little bit of charm, but that keeps you, kind of laughing a little bit. But it's definitely, I really struggled with the relationship between the three characters in this book. Not struggled as in it was difficult or hard to understand, but like started reconciling that someone in a position of power, the professor would treat someone who respected him so much, Conceal, with such little regard, it seemed. And there's kind of a fun relationship that develops between Conceal and Ned. They become friends, and and all of the crazy stuff that they experience as they're on the journey together, and the debate about whether or not to try to escape, and if Captain Nemo is really crazy, or and who he is and where he comes from, and how did he obtain all this knowledge, and where does all this money come from? He's just this mysterious figure, and there's a lot of good stuff in this book, but the characters are very reminiscent of other Verne novels, and the structure of the story is very similar to the other Verne novels. So you have the expert sidekick, and then the guy who goes along for the ride. The storyline is very much unexpected situation, adventure ensues, and a lot of stuff happens along the way. So there's all of that. I want to just pause for a second and speak as a Canadian for my fellow Canadians out there. Because Ned Land, the character in this book, who is the expert fisherman, harpoonist, they hire to basically take out the creature. He comes across just not great. And they kept calling him the Canadian. And every time they did that, I cringed. And I was like, man, I hope people don't leave this book. Thinking all Canadians are like this. And he's not terrible. He is funny and passionate, and but also loud and rude and argumentative, and it's just I don't know. That's just kind of an aside. It has nothing to do with the review itself, but general, the book sets out a sense of wonder, adventure, exploring the unknown, that you can never really be too sure of what you know. Always be open to learning and expanding your knowledge, and practically about the vastness of the ocean and how little we even understand it today. This book, takes place and was written hundreds of years ago now, and we know so much more today, and we still know so little. So it kind of captures your imagination about what's still out there for us to discover, those are all kind of positive things. Other things, strong elements of pessimism, the effects of isolation on people, and politics, global, national, how things get dicey when governments are involved, and the effects that the actions that governments choose to take can have in a long run on its people, So there's a lot of content in this book, and yeah, there's a lot, but there's also a lot that could be left out, and this is my pet peeve about this book, is it's a long one. And it's long. I would say easily 30% of this book could be cut out. And I'm gonna show you what I mean. So, the professor is an expert in identifying underwater species and stuff, and his manservant Conceal is an expert in classification. So, like genus, phylum, species, etc. The classification table, tree, you learn. And so, what I found was it was extremely taxing reading large blocks of text that were just them listing the various degrees to which different species fell into different categories, and also listing every single thing that they saw. So, from here, sorry. I'm just, I tagged it here, but, okay. Sorry, I just had to get my bearings for a second. So here, among the various fish inhabiting it, some I viewed, others I glimpsed, and the rest I missed completely because of the Nautilus's speed. Kindly allow me to sort them out using this whimsical system of classification. It will at least convey the quickness of my observations. And then he proceeds to list, in the midst of the watery mass, brightly lit by our electric beams, there snaked past those 1 meter lampreys that are common to nearly every clime, a type of ray from the genus, some word I can't pronounce, 5 feet wide, with a white belly, with a spotted ash-gray back, and was carried along by the currents like a huge wide open shawl. Other rays passed by so quickly. And then all of this text is him just listing all of the species he sees. Fish, mammals, and then, after he's done, as for his part, Conceal thought he spotted a turtle, 6 feet wide, adorned with 3 protruding ridges that ran lengthwise. I was sorry to miss this reptile, because from Conceal's description, I believe I recognized the leatherback turtle, a pretty rare species. And then, as for zoophytes, so let's recap. From here, four pages of full text, just listing species. 4 pages. Sometimes common names, sometimes scientific names, sometimes both. By the time I reached page 300 of the book, I believe it was 318, I remember, I started skimming those paragraphs because, 1, I didn't care, and 2, it was a waste of my time. It's almost encyclopedic, and the way it lists everything that they see. I was talking about this with someone, and they suggested perhaps there was a word count that Verne was trying to hit, and that's one way you could do that, I guess, but it's a very bad way, because it was a strong deterrent when I would sit down and I would hit that chunk of just lines and lines of listing species. I had to take a break, and usually I don't like to break a book in between chapters. I'm someone who likes to break this book, I couldn't do that. And the chapters are short, you know. I mean, I could do that sometimes, but when I would hit these lists, it's just so taxing reading through that. I'm just thinking back. Sorry to pause, but it was the most frustrating experience in reading this book. And if they cut all that out, or just even a significant portion of it, I think the book would be much more enjoyable, much easier to read, and it would really let the story shine through better, because I really feel that in between the lists and lists, the constant lists, there was a really good story being told, you know, and I did enjoy that a lot. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. The bits in between, I think because of the setting of being kind of under the water, mysterious, it really invokes that kind of curiosity for what's out there. And yeah, so there's that. Now, I will say, I did find the book ended very abruptly. So if there was a word count and he was trying to fill it, there was a better way to utilize that in wrapping up the story. Because I think it was too fast. We didn't learn enough, and it was a little unsatisfying. So I would say it's one of I don't want to say it's one of the in my last Jules Verne novel. I'm not really familiar with any of his other ones by name outside of the 3 that I've already read, and I'm not really interested in venturing to find them out. So I think this will cap off our Jules Verne series. Another kind of frustrating thing, along with the list of species, was listing events and explorers, and especially making note of French contributions to world exploration. Verne himself is French. There is a heavy French influence in the book, I think, to paint the French in a positive light. And it seemed a little unnecessary and a little exaggerated. But, you know, that's his choice. So that was another thing, along with a list of creatures, was lists of events, lists of ships, lists of explorers. He really liked to list things in this book. So yeah, I would say I liked it better than Around the World in 80 Days. So I would put it above that one. But I think overall, Journey to the Center of the Earth was probably the better introductory book to Verne, unless you're really interested in nautical themed books and sea adventures. I guess you could go for this one too, but just beware, it's a little long and a little dense, with extra material that's unnecessary. So that's this one. The next book, which I've already finished, so will be coming out next, is Space Carrots, a novel. I did a short, well, not a short, I did a review of books by YouTubers way back now, and I did the first book that came out of the brain of Ollie Kendall, and this is the second. If you're familiar with the Jelly YouTube channel, then you'll be familiar with this, Space Carrots novel, so that will be my next one to review. It's going to be pretty short, because the book itself is